Okay, we're going to take a look at the game Chainmail, Medieval Combat, designed by Richard Berg and produced by Worthington Games in 2009. Now, the medieval period is not a period that I'm very familiar with, but the game comes with 4 battles: Bovines, Legnano, Bannockburn, and Lewes. And it comes with 2 card decks. Each player gets his own card deck. Rules booklet, of course, profusely illustrated. It's 16 pages long, so it's not an overly complex game, and with lots of illustrations. So it's an easy game to learn, and a bit more difficult game to master, I think. And there's your scenarios. So it's not a difficult game to learn, but we'll talk about rules in a minute. But we're just going to look at the components now, and I'll give you a little bit of information on how the game plays. Let's take a look at the maps first. Now, the 4 games come on one large map sheet, 2 per side. You can flip it, and there's your other 2 battles. So let's take a look at Legnano first. Now, most medieval combat would take place in open fields, and that's Legnano. Square grid, not a hex grid. Of course, forest and open terrain. And to take a look at the Bovines. The maps are on thick stock, by the way, which is kind of nice. Here's the Battle of Bovines. River, of course. There's your roads and forest. There's the town of Bovines there. Okay. And this is the Battle of Lewes. This is a ridge line here. And another ridge. Level 1, level 2 terrain. Very open field. And there's Bannockburn. I'll fold it. We'll miss the bottom part a little bit there. Bannockburn. Looks like you've got some kind of swampy area here. Stream. Again, your forest. Very crooked little road here and open terrain. So, medieval combat, very open field kind of thing. Now, one nice feature with this game is it's easy to sort the counters. You just really need 4 bags. Just divide them into the 4 battles. If you really want to get ambitious, you can use 8 bags, I guess, and put 1 per side. But the game is very easy to set up. And let's take a look at the close-up of the counters. Now, each battle in the series does not use every type of unit. So we're going to take a look at some of the units that are used in the Battle of Legnano, because they all share common information. Now, in Legnano, we only use knights and pikemen, and these are leaders. And the information on the counters is explained thus. The little arrow always points the direction that the unit is facing. Remember, we're dealing with a square grid here. So that indicates the front of the unit. This is the combat value of the unit. Up at the top here, LG, that's for Legnano, which helps you in sorting the counters. And the K stands for knights, and that's the historical identification of the unit. Same with the pikeman. P, indicating a pikeman unit, and the name of the unit. And again, the arrow. I should point out that the white side of the counter indicates the unit at full strength, and when you flip with the gold or yellow side indicates the unit at half strength. Actually, there's the pikeman at half strength. There's the pikeman at full strength. Now, the leader counters are simple. They have 2 numbers separated by a slash. The first number to the left shows the combat value when the leader is in an attacking position. That's the number of battle points he can add. And the number to the right is the number of battle points he can add when he's defending. And there we have King Frederick and D'Agostino. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. So that's some typical units that are in the Battle of Legnano. Let's take a look at some of the units that are in some of the other scenarios. Okay, for the Battle of Bovines, they introduce a new unit, the Light Cavalry. You can see the number there. It says LC for Light Cavalry. They still have knights, different counters, Very colorful, actually, these counters. And, of course, the pikemen. And there's different colors for each scenario, which helps to sort the game, too. And, of course, the flip side, the gold side, will show the reduced number. Knights. So that's bovines, introducing the new light cavalry units. Okay, for the Battle of Luz scenario, they introduced some new units, the dismounted knights here. And that's the fresh side and that's the reduced side. Now the dismounted knights have two combat values on them. The top number is the number used when they're attacking, and the bottom number is used when they're defending. Again, the reduced sides. And there's a lot of pikemen in the Luz scenario too. Again, different coloration, different looking counters to distinguish the battles. Quite nice looking counters, by the way, and they're I think they're about an inch across, aren't they? They're quite large, very nice and very pleasing to the eye. Worthington has done a very nice job on these counters. And now we'll take a look at the last game, which is Bannockburn. Okay, there's some of the units for Bannockburn. I forgot, in bovines, actually a new unit was introduced to another one, is the crossbowman. It's kind of interesting. He's got a fire value, which we'll get into, and a shock value of only 1. He also does not have a reduced side, so if he takes any hits in the game, he's destroyed. The main new unit that is introduced in Bannockburn, of course, is the good old English longbowmen. Now, they don't have a shock value either, 0. They're mainly fire units, and they can fire up to 2 squares. We'll get into the tactics later. They also do not have a second step, so if longbowmen take a shock hit, they're gone. And there's the knights that we've already taken a look at. So Bannockburn introduces the longbowmen, and I mentioned bovines introduces crossbowmen too. So those are the types of units in the game. Now let's take a look at some of the tactics and some of the cards to the game. Now each player gets his own individual card deck, red deck and a blue deck, and the cards are catered for each scenario. Each scenario will be seeded a bit, so you won't have the same card use for each game you play. We'll just take a look at some example cards to give you an idea what they look like and how they generally work. Now there's a typical card. There's usually 3 main pieces of information on the card. On the left is the movement point value of the card, if it's used for movement points. And on the right is the battle points value, if used for battle points. And the event, if the card is used for the event. And at the bottom, it'll tell you which scenarios this card can be used. In this particular example, this card, Knight's Charge, can be used in Bannockburn, bovines, and Luz, and Legnano. In other words, all scenarios. Now let's take a look at some other ones that maybe don't. Yeah, now there's a card that can only be used in the Bannockburn and bovines scenario. And if the event is highlighted in yellow, it's an alarm to let you know that this particular card can only be used in the bovines scenario. This card may appear in the Bannockburn scenario, but if you're going to use this event, it can be used in bovines only. So the cards have a mine of information on them to help you decide how to use them. Now some of the cards, I might say, are a little wordy, might say. There's a lot of text to read there. Now once you have read it once and played the game a couple of times, this comes second nature. You get to know how the game works, so that's not a big deal. Just watch out for that. So, how does the game generally work? How do these cards work? Well, let's see. Okay, so the game is pretty free-flowing, actually, and pretty interactive, which is kind of neat. Now, each turn, you're going to have a hand of cards, but the phasing player is only going to be able to play 5 cards per turn. 5. Now, I'm just going to give an example of a movement, for example. So, let's say the phasing player played this card, and he decided to use it for 5 movement points. He can distribute these 5 movement points any way he likes. For example, he could move these 4 units 1 movement point. So 1, 2, 3, 4. He's got 1 movement point left. 5. He can do it that way. You have totally free flow. Or you could say, well, okay, I'm going to use this to move 5 movement points. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No problem. So when you use the card for movement, you can distribute the movement points whichever way you like. Okay? Now, generally clear terrain costs 1 movement point. And it costs 1 movement point to turn. So, an example move up the camera here. He would go, let's say, 1, 2, turn, 3, 4, 5. So movement is quite easy, and the square grid works quite nice with these counters. So let's show you a typical move and a typical attack. Okay, now this game does not have zones of control. That takes some getting used to. Let's say for the sake of argument, sake of illustration, the phasing player decides to play this 7 movement point card. Okay, 7 movement points. 7 movement points. So, let's say in this example, he decides to move this unit forward. So he goes 1, 2, 3, and turns. Okay, real life got in the way there. The phone rang. Okay, so in our example, we went 1, 2, 3, and turned 4. Did I? Right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. And we have 3 movement points left. So this guy could actually go up and attack also. So 1, 2. And we'll say for the sake of this illustration, I don't use the other movement point. So after you've played a card, okay, you're allowed to make 1 attack because I've used 1 card. And in this case, we're going to have an attack on this Lombard unit. And attacking is pretty easy, and you get advantages for attacking the flank, of course. When a unit attacks from the flank, he's doubles his battle points. So 10 and 4, 14 versus defense of 4. Now this is where the game gets kind of cute. I really like it. Now, I said that the attacker can only play 5 cards. And that's implicit. The most he can play is 5 cards in his turn. So in the battle that's going to occur, he can add, if he wants, up to 4 more cards for this attack. The defender, on the other hand, can play as many as he likes in defense. Of course, you're burning up cards like crazy when you do that. So let's do a typical battle choice, for example, just to show you how this works. Okay, I'm going to play this battle totally blind myself, so I don't know what's going to come up here. But let's say for the sake of argument, the attacker decides, you know, I really want to get that guy. I just want to get him. So I'm going to play 4 battle cards. Alright, so he does. So he plays a battle point card of 2, another one of 2, another one of 2, and another one of 4. So 6, 7, 8, he's adding 10 more battle points to that attack. 10 plus 4, 14, plus 10, 24. So we've got 24 battle points against that poor little unit of 4. But the defender decides to play 3 cards of defense. He plays a 3, a 3, and a 3, giving him 9. So that's 13. So in the end, that whole battle becomes 24 to 14. Now, what's key in this game is you really want to get double up against your opponent. You want to get double. In this case, he didn't. He got 24 against 14. The attacker does win the battle. No question about that. Now, when the attacker wins the battle, the defender has a choice. He can either stay where he is and take a step loss. Go like that. Say, oh, I held you off. I take a step loss. Or he can keep his formation intact and retreat 1 square. In this case, for the sake of argument, we'll have the guy retreat. And when he retreats, he's allowed to reface any direction he wants. In this case, he decides to retreat 1 square and remain facing the same way. The attacker must occupy the square, because this is shock combat, and he decides to occupy with this fella, and he's allowed to reface too. So that's the result of that combat. Now the attacker, or the phasing player, has burned up all 5 of his cards, so that's his turn. And the defender has burned up 3 in a battle. So now the play passes to the defender. So that's a little bit of how combat works. Some other little refinements I can point out. When you attack from the rear of a unit, you get triple value. So So in that case, it would be a 15 against a 4. Now, in a very simplified manner, that's how combat works in a game. Where it gets more complex is when you have lines of troops facing each other. It's a game really of card management and trying to bring your forces to bear against the enemy. Not easily done, especially when the defender can throw as many cards as he wants in defense. So that's generally how the combat works. Now let's take a look at the longbowmen, because they work kind of differently. Okay, here's an example of how longbowmen work and how combined with a shock attack they can be kind of effective. Alright, let's say the phasing player decides to play this 7 card, okay, for 7 movement points. Okay, 7 movement points. Alright, now when an archer fires at an enemy unit at 2 spaces away, it costs 3 movement points. Archers, their firing ability is actually a function of movement. So it costs 3 movement points to fire up to 2 squares away, and they are allowed to fire over friendly units. So in this case, we use 3 of the 7 movement points to fire at this unit. And the effect of receiving long-range fire is to disorder the unit, automatic. By the way, there's no die rolls in this game. There's no dice. So, longbowman fires at this unit and disorders him. We've expended 3 movement points. We'll spend another movement point to move this unit forward. So that's 4. They will go 5, 6, and turn 7. The reason I'm turning these units, of course, is you can only attack the units that you are directly facing. And now we're allowed to attack that unit. So now we can bring to bear, remember you're doubled when you flank, this is really a 4 and a 2, so 6 against 2, against a disordered unit. Now the effect of disorder at first doesn't sound much, it just means you can't shock attack and you can't missile fire. But the big disadvantage when you're disordered is if you lose a battle, even a retreat result, you lose a step instead. So let's say for the sake of argument, we're just trying to make this battle quite simple. The attacker decides to play this battle card, adding 2 more battle points, making this really a 4, 6, 2 more is 8. And let's say, for the sake of argument, this fellow decides to play 1 card, battle points of 3. So we have 7 against 5. The 3 plus the 2 is 5. But that's enough to win the battle. And because he's disordered and has to retreat, he loses a step instead. So you can see the disadvantage of being disordered. You're more vulnerable in attacks. Now that, in a very simplified form, is generally how combat works. I won't go into all the nuances and all the many cases you can have. Many of the cards in the, if you play for the event, allow all kinds of special things to happen. Here's a continued attack where you keep on attacking. Here's a card where you're allowed to pass through your own units because you can't stack in this game. Special rule for axemen in the Bannockburn scenario only. Cavalry pursuit, lose only. So the card events themselves are a mine of information and different tactics used in the game. Here's this coordinated move card, which is really nice. You play that, it means you can attack all the way down the line. Because remember, with your 5 card maximum for the phasing player, the maximum number of attacks you can actually do per turn is 5. So this coordinated move card is quite nice. So that, in a very simplified form, is Chainmail and how it generally works. Okay, well that's Chainmail. Now, in summary, what do I think of the game? Well, I do like it. It's a nice little simple game. It is not a detailed study of medieval combat. I think you'd want to get games like Men of Iron or something more for that. It's just a nice little game. It's easy to play, fairly easy to learn. Now the rules, I have a little bit of an issue with the rules, and I'm sorry to say that's a little kind of well, some of the Worthington games suffer from that. The rules are not very well explained. I had to ask a few questions on Board Game Geek and Consim, and they were answered. So Worthington is certainly supporting the product. But the rules can be a little vague, especially if you're a new game player, or actually if you're a veteran, because you might be carrying baggage from other games. So the game is certainly playable. Once you get the system down, I don't think there's really a problem with it. It's a card management game. Managing these cards and using them to the best of your opportunity is the way you're going to win. The game, for your first game, you might find it a little dry at first, because us wargamers, we're used to destroying units. You go in, attack, destroy units, and that's the way you win. It's very, very difficult to destroy units in this game. Very difficult. You really have to surround them, use your cards to your best advantage, make your opponent burn up cards so you have more. There's lots to this game. That's what's kind of neat about it. So after your first game, get a couple of games under your belt, you'll sort of see the neatness of it. So that's my summation of Chainmail from Worthington Games. I will applaud them on their components. Worthington has always produced games with just terrific components. I love the large counters. The cards are quite nice. Rules booklet, well, it's illustrated. New shiny design with paper we're becoming used to. So, and you get 4 battles from the medieval period. So overall, yeah, Chainmail is generally a positive experience, and I can recommend it. But you have to stick with it. You'll have to play a few games to get the system under your belt. Thanks for watching.